agree. Oh, it's so good to see you.
It's so exciting to see you too. Hi, welcome to the Tiny Desk Adventure. I'm so excited that you're my first guest.
Yay.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, start rambling as I always do, but I want to, welcome Gabrielle to our first Tiny Desk Adventurer. Really, it was, I reached out to a bunch of people who I thought are passionate but also great storytellers. That was a real key point for me. And my dirty little secret that I'm going to confess to everyone is Gabrielle has one of my favorite ever Instagram profiles, and it's really not because she has giant megafauna swimming around that's beautiful to capture. It is the magic of the plankton and the fact that she shares the science. But also, you know what? I always tell people, like, if you see a whale, you're really lucky because you're probably like less than, a handful of people in the world that'll ever get to see whales. But really, there's
Mhm.
probably less people that'll ever see plankton. What do you think?
I tend to agree. Not many people have a microscope or they realize, plankton are all around them, but sometimes you need a special piece of equipment to see them.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you do is amazing because you really like unravel their world for us, and that's what I think about your Instagram. And it's also you're very very soothing to listen to, so it's always really nice. I have a staff member. She might be in the room already, but she I think I saw her come in. But she is like she said that your Instagram took her through her thesis, her master's thesis. So just
No
be
way.
watch it. So you got a mad fan out there amongst a bunch of other fans, just FYI. Um, but first, also, I want to say big news, Dr. Gabrielle.
Yes, it's official. My graduation would have happened on Saturday, but it got canceled, so it would have been official.
That's okay. I just wanted to say congrats, handmade,
That's amazing.
doctor. Make sure you use that title. For a long time, this is so random, but for a long time, I was like really hesitant to put the letters in front of my name, and it wasn't that I was like ashamed, but I just felt like, oh no, no, that's kind of felt like showing off. And then someone turned around and said, you dedicated like multiple years of your life to it. Like you deserve it. And I was like, oh my gosh, so true. So my advice to you right now is just use it. Okay?
I feel the same like hesitation where I'm like, I don't know if I don't want to, I feel that exact same thing. That's why actually like I emailed, I was like, should I put doctor? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You like totally. You earned it. Nobody came and just like threw it at you and was like, doctor. They were like, you just sat and at your desk, you stared at a microscope, you did all this fantastic stuff for so long. So own it and use it. And you're getting so much congratulations from people. You just have to turn sideways to find out. But everybody's really
Thank
excited
you.
for you. I'm really excited for you. Is this your first official outing since becoming doctor?
It is. This is it. This is the first one.
I'm so happy. So ridiculous. So I want to
It's
start
perfect.
off by saying, okay, so in your video, and I hope everybody had a chance to watch the video. It's up on the website, so definitely check it out. And also click on the link underneath the videos because we asked our amazing adventurers a few questions that are kind of personal, that I think will inspire you, will motivate you, will give you answers to some of the questions that we got coming in. So I'm going to skip over those questions the second time round, obviously. But I want to say, in your video, and I thought it was the most beautiful line. You said, plankton is a way of life, right? Like it's so true. Um, how do you feel like you compare to plankton?
Ooh, how do I compare it to plankton? Well, sometimes I feel like I'm drifting through as well. So sometimes I feel that I too am a drifter in our ocean. So I think that if anyone has ever been in really rough waves or has been maybe just like in a situation where the water wasn't completely calm and you get just swept up, I mean, that's what a plankton is, and that you're experiencing exactly what either zooplankton or phytoplankton feel every single day. You feel the power of the ocean, and that's, it's sweeping you up. We're a lot bigger than most plankton, but we can get, you know, pushed around a little bit by those waves the same way the plankton are.
Yeah,
So, I mean, every time I get into the water, I feel that way. Just the magnificence of the power of the ocean.
yeah, and I mean, I guess that, that's what scale does, right? Perspective. Like plankton is tiny. in like in a even a puddle of water or even a drop of water. There's lots of plankton,
Hmm.
right? But we're the same, right? In this giant scale of the planet, we're just a little tiny drop. So in so many ways, I
Yep,
guess they're kind of like plankton, right?
exactly.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I think that's a cool comparison actually to how we feel, when you're being bashed around by the waves and taken where you don't want to go. I mean, I guess if you get stuck in a current and, the
Hmm.
different plankton probably don't panic because they're just like, hey, this is life, right?
Yep.
Whereas we're like, oh my gosh, this is not where I want to go. I want to go that way. Like, it's kind of crazy. But then you're also swirling around in plankton, right? That's what people
Hmm.
don't realize.
Yeah, it's all around you, whether you're at the surface water, whether you're in the deep sea, there is plankton absolutely everywhere. It's just a matter of what type they are and, if they need sunlight or not. But yeah, there's plankton, whether you're in a lake or a river or a pond or the ocean, it's there.
Hmm. That's cool. I mean, I really, and this is just a random question, but do you know how much plankton there be like in a drop of water, or is there any number?
Yeah, there is. So if you, the idea is if you swallow a mouthful of water, you're swallowing a few tablespoons, right? So you are swallowing anywhere between 500,000 to several million individual plankton cells. So it depends. Yeah. So it depends. If you're by the surface, you're gonna swallow a lot more. There's a little bit less plankton in deeper waters, but it's still there. So yeah, so if you're on the sea surface and you're swallowing, you're ingesting like millions of plankton because bacteria are plankton, and so it scales all the way from the really tiny bacterial cells all the way up to the larger, phytoplankton, zooplankton. But yeah, it's pretty impressive.
That's really impressive. I mean, and we think about plankton, we always talk about it being the base of every food web, right? Like it's such a fundamental thing. And I think, I guess, people are curious, like what eats plankton? But I guess everything, right?
Everything you can have. So some plankton will eat each other. You'll have the zooplankton that eat the phytoplankton. So you'll have even large zooplankton like jellyfish, for example, will eat even smaller zooplankton. And then you have things that we know and love like shellfish. We have like clams and oysters. These guys will just filter feed and sponges on the seafloor. And then you have everything larger, like you have turtles eat plankton, they eat jellyfish. You have sunfish that eat jellyfish. You have baleen whales that'll eat small krill and copepods. So it's like it's really it's the base, but it also can be organisms can directly feed on it too. So it's really it's there. Everything is connected to plankton, really. Even when plankton die, they sink throughout the water column, and all of that carbon goes to the bottom of the ocean. So you have like the benthic organisms that are there will directly depend on the surface waters and all that plankton sinking down in the form of marine snow. So like in even just those really interesting ways that we don't think about.
Yeah, that's cool. And you know what? I'm just kind of I'm tilting my head, partly to agree, but partly because there's comments about I thought plankton was just plants. I thought plankton was only in the character in SpongeBob. I love it. It's alive. It's everywhere. I mean, the base of every food chain, and we're ingesting it too. So we kind of, inadvertently we consume plankton too, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's really cool to remember. Um, what's your favorite plankton? Do you have one that you have like a little for?
I do. It was a plankton that I worked with for my PhD, and it's a novel plankton, and so I was able to name the genus and the species, and so that plankton is like very near and dear to my heart. I originally tried to kill the plankton. It was a contaminant, so I originally tried to get rid of it for months, and I was like, "What is this thing?" And it turned into my PhD.
And like a discovery, right? And you got to name it, which is
Yeah.
cool. I think, gosh, for any oh, can only see you but can hear both of you. Oh, you can't see Gabrielle? Hang on. We need to rectify this. I want to make sure that you're in the screen because I mean I don't want to lose you. Hello, everybody. Let us know if you
Can it?
can't see Gabrielle because it's kind of fun for me to have a guest who you can't see. That would make me sad. So just give me a shout. Oh, can't. Oh, okay. Well, oh, okay. Jan, I think that's just you because I think most everyone can see. Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling. Um, just keep going. Okay, so I've got a few quick questions that people have thrown at me and to ask you to speak to you, and they just get to watch. So I'm lucky. Um, okay, what can you tell me about bioluminescence, right? Bioluminescent plankton. I think it's exciting.
Say that again. I think you cut out a little bit.
Oh, okay. Have you seen bioluminescent plankton?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Everyone can, if you go to, so a few things here. A lot of plankton can bioluminesce, and a lot of organisms have that ability. If you go down to the ocean and you take a coffee filter and you run the coffee filter at night through the water for maybe 5, 8 minutes, you too can see bioluminescent plankton. A lot of the times, and one of the things that with bioluminescence, it's a really big topic right now because of the big bloom that happened. There's a few in California right now where you see those beautiful waves. I mean, those plankton are there, and we just happen to be able to see them at night. And so anyone that goes down to the ocean, a lot of times I use a plankton tow or a coffee filter just to concentrate them, so I can see them, and they're really beautiful. Bioluminescent plankton are a lot of times they have the bioluminescence to communicate with each other, and if anyone is interested in that, I highly recommend you look into that further because the bioluminescence in the deep sea is also incredible with plankton. Yeah.
But okay, so that's exciting. So yeah, so bioluminescence, super fun. I've seen it. You know, when those images of the dolphins went out a couple of weeks ago in California, that's one of my most memorable encounters with plankton, I guess, but also in general, because I was on a boat where we saw exactly that, right? So it's so magical. Somebody did ask, so is bioluminescent plankton around all the time?
Yes, typically. It can be a lot of times we just don't see it because they're not in high numbers or we're not typically by the ocean at night. A lot of us just don't see it. I've been going for several years with my advisor down to the coastline in North Carolina, and every time we just do a tow, it might take a little bit longer. Typical plankton tow by the surface, maybe a few minutes, but for to make sure we concentrate all of the plankton that can bioluminesce, might do it for maybe 8 minutes. And yeah, each time we get them, it's pretty incredible.
That's very, very cool. So there's questions around like climate and like as our oceans warm, what impact happens to the plankton? As glaciers melt and you get more fresh water washing, how does that impact the communities of plankton and the composition of those communities? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Mhm. So plankton, there are going to be some climate change winners and some losers. Some phytoplankton are very much like weeds. You can get them and they're very hardy. The same way if you look out and you see grass outside, no matter what, you might get things that grow between the concrete that are just always going to be there. They're just very hardy. The same thing with plankton. A lot of the times when we have the glaciers or ice that melts, there can be dust and nutrients that are trapped inside that get released. And so sometimes when we have that, we'll actually have plankton blooms that are happening because of that release of like iron and important nutrients like for the plankton that are now available to them. So there's going to be a lot of change that we see with climate change and plankton.
Mm.
It's going to be everything from, you're going to see a lot of blooms that are happening. So the really hardy organisms are going to take over. So it's going to be it's going to depend on the area, and it's also going to depend on what the natural community looks like. But we are
Okay.
starting to see some of those impacts already.
Okay. And so, I mean, I guess in a vein, like, what about things like red tides? Like, those are composed of plankton. Like, what can you tell me about them?
Yeah, so red tide is plankton. It's a phytoplankton. It's typically a dinoflagellate. And red tide, so the important thing to note is phytoplankton blooms happen all the time, and the majority of them are fine. They're important to the ecosystem. and they are natural, but there are some that are harmful, and those become harmful algal blooms or HABs. And these will be really, they'll have a really negative impact. They can impact us just because they're toxic. They can also harm large marine mammals. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that goes into the changing of the food web when you have a harmful algal bloom.
Ah, okay. Well, that's interesting because I mean I've heard about red tides. I've never seen them, but obviously that's a good thing, right? Like you say, it's toxic, and it's problematic for the environment, I suppose. So for the species that might munch on them, right? So um, so just to point out, your screen is going a bit mushy from time to time, but I can hear you perfectly fine, guys. If you have a problem hearing either of us or either of us freeze or anything, do shout because we can always just everybody just come back in the room, okay? Don't leave us. We've got some exciting stuff to tell you. Red tide fish?
Yeah, so red tide can harm fish. A lot of the times, um, algae or phytoplankton, they can harm actually physically the fish. Some algae can get caught in the fish's gills, but then also as the plankton. So remember, the water's red. So as the plankton begin to die and the bacteria begin to eat and break down the bacteria use the oxygen in the water. And so you'll get massive fish kills that happen because of the low oxygen that's happening maybe a few weeks or so after the bloom happened. And so there's this compounding effect that can happen with these blooms.
Because just a couple of days ago on my diving club, my Sabako Club group, someone had taken a video of a bunch like a fish kill, and there was this discussion about why and it's kind of at a river mouth, so there was discussion about like the toxic chemicals from
For you.
oh I think I oh oh you can hear me, okay, that's fine then. My question, which was I guess I was talking oh somebody asked so if a fish ingests some inside, would it die, or I mean if someone were to eat fish, would it be toxic to a person?
It depends. It depends on what trophic level or how big or small the fish is because
Okay.
algal toxins can bioaccumulate. So that means that if a small fish ate the phytoplankton and then the medium-sized fish ate the small fish, it can accumulate, which is what sometimes you can see with something like domoic acid or with large marine mammals that are ingesting the fish that are ingesting the plankton. So it kind of depends on the size of the fish. A lot of the times you don't want to ingest shellfish, you don't want to ingest fish, you don't want to ingest squid or pretty much anything that has come into contact with these large harmful blooms. That's why those beach signs that say, do not swim, don't walk your dogs around here, don't eat the fish, don't go fishing. It's the same type of thing. That's why a lot of the times water monitoring programs are so important because
Mm.
they will monitor that yearly and then they'll put up the signs saying, hey, there's a reason why we don't want you in this water. Because sometimes the toxins from algae and from plankton, they can aerosolize, meaning that as the plankton break up, like there can be irritants that are in the air that you want to be mindful of.
Oh, interesting. So what, like you can inhale it and it could be
Yeah.
irritating?
Yeah, it can be an irritant to you. That's why, it's you don't want to eat it, but you also don't necessarily want to be around it either. So that's why,
Hmm.
they don't last terribly long. The blooms aren't going to last, months and months. Typically, they'll last a week, maybe two at the most before they begin to die off and all of that. So it's not algal blooms come and go very quickly.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so I mean, you have a very defined path, right? Like, and you obviously love plankton, which I think is amazing. You're incredibly passionate about it. You love sharing, right? Like, I mean, that to me, you know, that's kind of why I wanted you on this tiny just adventure, because I love people who share, because I love to share. I think we're not going to make a difference in this world if we're not giving everything we have away, which, and we have that, what we have is knowledge, right? And I think that's really cool. Um, So I guess, but when someone has this pretty solid pathway in mind, like, have there ever been times when you sort of doubted, like, and thought, oh, I could have been doing something else, or will I be able to make it? Or, how do you reframe that in your mind so you can keep chugging?
I will say that I don't know where the passion came from, but I've always had it. Like my devotion and like just pure love. I have been grateful enough to be able to follow. My parents have been my number one like cheerleaders and have been just supportive of me since the very beginning. So I mean, everything is really from them nurturing that love at the very, at age 5, So it's really from just following that. I have never really deviated. I've done other jobs in marine science. I haven't always been a researcher at Plankton, but there is just something about it that has just always brought me back. There's something about marine science and communicating to the public and like teaching the next generation has always been just my my love. This is great. We're just gonna keep going.
Yeah, and look at that. Everybody keeps flooding back into the room. It's almost like I'm trying to test them to see whether they'll come back, and they do, which is great. It's a compliment, guys. Like, thank you. I'm gonna take that. This is awesome. If you guys have any questions that I can read sideways, do send them in right now. But we don't want to. We're not gonna go on for too much longer. But I guess I'm just trying to look through some of the questions to see what else people might have to ask. I guess I'm also interested in, like, when did you know like plankton was your thing? I mean, plankton is it's so specific, but it's not like something, like I said, right at the start, it's not something you see when you go down to the beach or you go on a boat. Or it really is something that you have to delve into in a totally different way. And I think it's that's why, unfortunately, a lot of people, I mean, I don't know many people who go down that path. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think they are amazing animals, creatures, right, of all kinds. So when did you know it was plankton that like wanted, pulled your heartstrings?
I would say plankton, I've always been question oriented. So I've always been very interested in organism behavior.
Okay.
And that has always been just my driving just passion has been like, well, why do toothed whales, behave this way? Or why does a coral polyp do this? Or a shorebird migrate, thousands of miles? So it's always been a behavior question. And the behavior in plankton is just outstanding. I mean, you can have organisms that are part phytoplankton, zooplankton in their one-celled organisms. I mean, you can have like just the most incredible behaviors in this group that is just I could study it till forever. And I am. And it's just incredible. So that is just it's really exciting. You just keep learning. You keep discovering new things about just all the variety. The organism I studied for my PhD. It is slightly larger than a bacteria cell
Okay.
and it has a food preference. What? How
A
does something
food prep.
Yes, it has a food preference depending on how hungry it is. And it's like, what? How is that possible? You're so tiny, but it's like, sometimes it wants this food, sometimes it wants something else, depending on how hungry it is. If it's and
That's
it's
great. It's like a spoiled child, basically. Maybe there are some mothers out there who are like, my goodness, this is starting to sound so much like my child. It's crazy. Sometimes it wants this, and then when I give it this, it doesn't want it. It wants something else. Like, maybe, I mean, that's so interesting. And, we don't think about it. And that's what's amazing, is that these are tiny single cell things, like, that are just like totally, we just saunter past them constantly, millions of them. We have no idea they're out there, but then they do these things, right? And I think, to me, that's what's so precious about what you do, is you really do show us a world that I most people will never see. Most people don't choose to, because they don't realize it's happening. And I'm hoping that after today, people will be so excited about plankton, they'll follow you, March of the Plankton. I'm telling you, it's totally worth it. I'm not even like just saying this because I think Gabrielle's cool. I think she's cool because she does cool stuff with her life. Okay, let's just put that out there. Anna says his children don't like leftovers. Eat fussy kids, I'm telling you, that plankton. I mean, your species. But I think it's it's a special talent to be able to bring that kind of world to life. Like I think but when we see, like, I'm sure people who saw your video would agree that you shown us so many different kinds of plankton in that like few minutes, right? And they just they're squiggling, they're kind of they're different shapes, and they're beautiful. I mean, I think people just don't realize how beautiful they are, right?
They are. They are. I mean, the in the video I showed some plankton. A lot of plankton are the larger ones that I show. They're called diatoms, and they're made out of glass. And so they're like these incredible small organisms. And we think of glass, we think of like fragile, right? But they're hardy, and they produce more oxygen, than most of the trees. And so we have phytoplankton that produce more than 50% of the oxygen that I mentioned in the video. And it's just we know so comparatively we know so little about this microscopic world, and we just have
Yeah.
all these discoveries. They're just beautiful. They're just beautiful organisms.
Totally. I'm totally I'm going to tell everybody, go Google diatoms, because I'm telling you the array of beautiful kind of, I mean, they're very intricate. Like you think about a jewel or a gem, right? Like how they have facets and stuff. Like diatoms are more complex than that and just incredible. And they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And, there's lots of comments about loving your passion about these things. There was a question about the difference between a marine biologist and an oceanographer, and I think that's kind of interesting because I identify as a marine biologist. I'm very interested in sort of the biological stuff and the behaviors, and I mean, I guess from my point of view, the way I would see it is like the oceanography involves a lot of the physical processes as well, which is relevant to what you do, right? Like my PhD was in oceanography, but it was complicated for me because I'm not really, the physical processes are a bit like too much for me, whereas biology I can handle. But would you say that's the sort of difference that you think of, or?
Yeah, I think so. My PhD is in biological oceanography, so I kind of walk that line between I am a marine biologist, so I'm an oceanographer, I'm an ecologist, I'm like a little bit of this and that. I will say that I identify with biological oceanography because there is a chemical component to what I do. I too, I kind of shy away a little bit from the physics, and I dive headfirst into the biology and even some of the chemistry. Because as I mentioned, like when people think about plankton, one of the things that oceanographers think about is the cycling, like the big picture of like how the carbon that the plankton have, right? They're all carbon, they're all individual organisms that have carbon in them. As they sink, they're going to feed that carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle. And so there is a component that I think of with that. But I will tell you, it's all from my advisor. Before I started, I had no idea the impact. She really introduced me to like these important cycles and understanding where a tiny individual species of plankton will completely disrupt, part of a cycle or what that means for that ecosystem. So I was
Can
very
you
new to it.
can you give us an example of like how maybe one of these tiny species can cycle?
Yeah, if you want to think back to earlier when we were talking about the algal blooms, right? So if you have a bloom that's of harmful algae and they begin to kill off the fish that are in the ecosystem because of the toxicity and also because of the increase of bacteria from just the degradation of the algal cells, like that's going to disrupt that local community. So, yeah.
I do want to say, I think it is amazing. I was just saying earlier before we got to cut out, the fact that we have kind of parallel stories, right? Like we started young, we kind of were very driven, we had a passion, we had a sense of what we wanted. We were supported by our family. And, a lot of people say, I think there is a component of luck, but I also think it's a two-way street. And I think people forget that parents give, we build those friendships, and a lot of mutualness is important kind of thing that we do. Not to take away from the fact that we got lucky with parents that, sorry, I'm looking, that could be the next disaster, charges. But, But yeah, so I also want to encourage people to say, yes, uh, we are lucky, we have parents who supported us, but also just remember that we indulge most relationships, right? So like I've, during this period, to just be stuck at home with my parents, I can't imagine being stuck with anyone else. And I know that's the same for you, right?
I'm home. I'm here with my parents.
Yeah, and happy.
Yeah, yeah. Thank God. I mean, I would be lost. So thank goodness.
I totally agree. And I think that's really nice. I think it's nice to acknowledge. Just the other day, I was talking to a neighbor who, you know, I sent a video, that a Nat Geo video about myself. He'd asked for it rather, and then he was like, you know, it's nice to see people acknowledging and giving credit to parents. And I said, well, you know, if my parents, the only thing they had to do for me was say, just do what you have to do, right? And that's really the
Yeah.
magic, right? It's not, it doesn't have to be a lot more than that. And I think if your parents out there, um, that way, you know, like your kid can soar if you give them just that freedom. A parent yourself, or if you know, are thinking about then your future, just think about all these things. I mean, both of us totally acknowledge our parents' role in this, right? So
hmm
important. Um, But okay, so I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to say thank you so much. You know what? This has been so fascinating. I think people have learned a lot. I've learned a lot. I mean, I love Plankton. Um, you know, I totally believe that I know for a fact my blue whales wouldn't exist if not for the Plankton. So I have true love for them, right? I always say that out loud. That Plankton people can be like, yeah, but you don't care about Plankton. I'm like, no, I do. Don't be
Yeah,
silly, right?
absolutely.
The whales eat krill or shrimp. All of those things are plankton. You know what? Actually, what's the largest kind of plankton out there?
There's some debate around it, but actually there's some really large jellyfish, but also the sunfish is considered to be plankton as well because it can't really swim that strongly. So yeah, so those are the two. There is some debate, but those are the two larger examples.
What? That's so fun. Okay, guys, if you don't know what a sunfish is, go check out our our very first episode in our ocean creature feature series. It was about the mola mola, and actually this week we talk about Portuguese man of war.
Yeah.
Um, So, fun facts, guys. Well, it's been amazing. We also have been like plankton, sort of drifted in our conversation a little bit. The internet has been incredibly planktonic. It has drifted in and out. Just saying. Uh, Staying on theme, I guess. But I really want to say again, thank you so much. You know, thank you for taking us on this adventure. You know, your video was beautiful. People loved the sample jars. I think, you know, we overlook these creatures. We don't think about them. We just, I hope everybody in the audience has now fallen in love a little more with the plankton and pick up jars and just stare at them, right? Like that's all we need. True love for the base of the food web in the oceans. I'm going to make a recording of this and it will be available on our website and on social media and stuff so people can rewatch. I will edit out every time I got cut out and then swore because that's not appropriate. But I do want to say once again, congrats.
Thank you. And
So
thank you to everyone.
awesome. Yeah, this is so awesome.
Thank
I'm so excited. Dr. Gabrielle, everybody, please give it up for Dr. Gabrielle in every way you can. One hand clapping or two hand clapping. But thanks again so much for doing this and joining us and coming all the way to Sri Lanka.
Yes, thank you. If anyone has any questions, feel free to send me a message.
So March of the Plankton, don't forget to follow her, guys. You'll be doing yourself such a disservice if you aren't. I swear. It honestly, I follow a lot of cool Instagram people, no lies. But I've always, I mean, I can tell you, I followed her, I stalked her, not gonna lie. And then I also when we met, it was so exciting because we'd already
Oh,
communicated
gosh.
it all. Wasn't that amazing? It's kind
Yeah,
of nuts. And just so you all know, we've only like really met once, and that
yeah.
was just months ago. But we were friends on Instagram before out of mutual love for like just what we do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I reached out to you before I even applied for my first Nat Geo grant, and you like were kind enough to like take the time to answer my questions, and it was great. Like it's just been Instagram has been really great with keeping us connected with each other's work, and it's been wonderful.
It's amazing. And actually, on that point about the grant, you know what's so funny? So just so everybody knows, people send in questions and say, you know, ask me questions, right? Random people, support and career, like what do I do next, whatever. I do my very best to answer. Like I can tell you that. And I remember when you turned to me and you said, ages ago, before I got my Nat Geo grant, I wrote you an email, and when you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, I have clearly not responded, and she just tell me this, and I was like, oh my god. And I try so hard, and obviously some of them slip through the cracks, right? Like it's so hard for me to keep up sometimes. And I was so relieved when you told me that I responded. It was like, I'm not a bad person. It's not.
No, wonderful. It gave me like such joy because I'd been following your work for so long. I was like, there's like a 10% chance that she'll answer, but I'm just gonna go for it. It's great.
That's cool. But I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled once again. And, we're always going to be connected. We have our various channels, but I'm so happy that I could bring you to a whole new audience. Hopefully get you more excited followers, really for the sake of Plankton. It's for the sake of our oceans and for our planet. 50% of the auction free, thanks to you tending and caring for these little things, right? So everybody's shouting out saying thank you. They found it very interesting. They loved it. You'll see all the comments on the recording, so you can painfully sit through everything, but I will cut bad bits. So thank you. Have a lovely day.
Yeah.
I'll be in touch. Everybody follow me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.